Hey, everybody, it's Becky Drose. Thank you for joining me on the Gorilla HR podcast. Today, we're going to talk about something a little bit different, but that is very near and dear in the world of human resources, and that is professional employer organizations or PEOs. So, in the HR world, I often have some of my clients, sometimes just different people that I've worked with or different places that are like, what's a PEO? Do we need one? How does it work? What does it do? I don't understand. And there's a lot of mystery around it. So, today, I am excited because we have Ryan Apt with ExtensisHR, and he is going to help us demystify the whole world of PEOs and talk about the pros and cons and who it works for. So, Ryan, welcome.
Hey, Becky, thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Excited to be here and share some knowledge.
Yes, yes, yes. So I do want to get into the whole world of PEOs and talk about what that is, but give us a little background. Like, how did you end up in this world?
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. I've been in it for about 7 years, a couple different places. Really, for me, I was selling IT, outsourced IT for small businesses, and I came across PEOs, and we became good referral partners just because you outsource IT to small businesses, you outsource HR, it just kind of worked. And so it was a lot of leads back and forth, and eventually they said, "Hey, you kind of know what you're doing. Why don't you come work in this world?" And so then I got sucked in and I've been in it ever since.
Yeah, I definitely think that with the PEO, especially having that sales of the IT, because I think really what it comes down to is some of these organizations that are, I would say they're smaller, they tend to be a little bit smaller, where there's a lot that it just doesn't make sense for them to have the people in house to do all these jobs. And so, like, you're not going to spend the money and invest in IT, just like in some situations, you're not going to spend the money to invest in all these different, like, HR professionals with all their different components and pieces of it. So, I think that's probably the piece that connects those together. But instead of me talking about it, for in your words, what is a PEO?
So really a PEO in the way I just very simple explanation is that I describe it as a bundle of kind of all things HR. So you've got your payroll, bundling health benefits in, as well as those HR support and HR services. So things like helping with onboarding, helping with handbooks, helping with recruiting, performance management, things of that nature. All those things that you think of HR, and maybe bigger companies, but you don't really have the resources to do. That's where the PEOs come in to help support those small to mid-sized companies.
So when if an organization has a PEO in place, could they still have like an HR business partner, or typically is it there's nobody in that HR space?
That's the big misconception with PEOs is that you hear outsourced HR and you're like, no, I don't, I have an HR person. And the truth of the matter is we love to have HR people, whether it's a full-time HR person, a fractional HR person, you know, any type of HR support role. And some of our clients have HR teams of multiple people. And really in those situations, we love it because we love to have somebody on site that is pretty much spearheading all of this. And so we're in the background saying, okay, we're going to automate the admin side. We're going to automate that payroll. We're going to automate the onboarding, the offboarding, the benefits admin, all those admin things that HR people hate, but you've got to do it. So if we can automate that and then allow you to focus on what's the most important thing, and that's the people, and we can support that, whether it's through, training development or leadership training or any of those things that you need, or maybe you just have some questions, that's where we really can support. So having those HR people on site is just so beneficial for PEOs and as well as companies. So
They can be the champions for you that speak the language.
100%. Yeah. So that misconception of, we have an HR person. Awesome. We love that. Thank you.
And you've already started to touch on it, but so let's start with payroll because I think for a lot of organizations, they think like PEO just means payroll. So I know that's a piece of it. So tell me about like what does it mean in the sense of payroll, and then we'll get into some of those other things that you mentioned as well.
For what a PEO is, because we become the like employer of record for the IRS, is that we have to do payroll. So every PEO has to do that, and because we handle the payroll taxes, we set up your tax IDs. If you're multi-state, or even if you're just in one state, we'll set all that up for you. So for a PEO, that's the one thing we have to do is payroll. So that does come up time to time. It's like, hey, I love my payroll vendor, but I want different things with PEO. No, we have to do payroll. It's just kind of the one thing that we have to do.
And so you said something that I think is important there, and that's employer of record. Talk a little bit more about that. What does that mean?
Yeah, so there's different certifications that you can get within the PEO world, and one of the big ones is a certified PEO. If you're going to look at PEOs in general, I highly recommend you look. You can go to the IRS website. You can ask them to confirm it for you. But that certification with the IRS means that if something ever happens with your taxes, they're going to come after the IRS is going to come after the PEO, not the company. And so if there's ever something that happens where it's not just not paid or some kind of issue, that's where the IRS would come in. And a couple of the benefits of that certification is that, if the employer of record that you mentioned, that kind of people get all up in arms. They're like, what does that mean? Who are my employees working for? No, they're working for your company. No, they're not working for the PEO. We don't want to be involved in day to day. You're running your company, you're hiring your people. We're just there in the background.
So then what's the name on the paycheck? Like if I see my direct deposit, what does my direct deposit say?
It's gonna, like, for your case, it would have Gorilla HR and it would have Extensis on it. So that's that certification of the IRS that allows you to have both names. So there's no question of who do you work for. You go get a loan, things like that. It's gonna have both companies on there, and there's no issues, no confusion.
Yeah, I think sometimes without the idea of, co-employment and it's like, well, who do I work for? And who do if I need a verification or I'm getting a loan, like what company do I say? So yeah, I think it's helpful to understand.
All the W-2s, the pay stubs will have both. And nowadays, banks and things like that, loans, they understand.
Much more common behind the scenes there.
No real issues there with that.
So you also mentioned, in addition to the pay piece, that there's some different HR support. What are some of the different areas of support that you can provide to an organization through a PEO?
So a lot of times the handbook is the biggest one. So most companies now are multi-state, and it could be. I mean, even with us, we're in North and South Carolina. We're right on the border. So even if you're in both states, you have to have. There's different laws, regulations for both states. So having a handbook that is for each state specific that you're in is very important. So, and you hire remotely. So maybe you hire in a state you've never been in before and you don't know, maybe you're hiring like Idaho. You're like, I don't know anything about that. So, what can you help me? And so we can help, make sure one, if they have any crazy laws, regulations, things like that for hiring, two, have that handbook up to date. So when they sign the handbook, when they start, it's up to date with your policies, your regulations, plus anything state specific that they needed for that.
Yeah, I think that's really helpful because I think even a lot of my clients are in North and South Carolina as well. And occasionally I have a handbook review or we're looking at a policy. In South Carolina, they have this crazy employee acknowledgement page that's like it must be the second page and it must be caps, it must be underlined, it must be font of this size. And employers see it and they're like, well, this is really ugly and this is not, like this doesn't fit like my branding guidelines. And I'm like, sorry, that's South Carolina.
And that comes up. If you go into states like California, if you go into states like New York, they have just all kinds of different laws and regulations that you have to follow. So just keeping up to date in those areas. And for a one person HR group or just no HR that happens to be like an office manager or executive, they don't have time to keep up with all of that. Plus their day to day, jobs. So
Yeah, I can see a lot of value just in that multi-state piece of it because there are so many little nuances and things that you just don't know if you don't know.
yeah.
You also mentioned onboarding. So that is something that I hear from a lot of organizations that I work with is that they spend the time to do the recruiting and they get people in, they feel like they've got the right person, and then they kind of get thrown in. And often there's not really a great onboarding beyond, day one of let's make sure we've done your I-9 and your paperwork and make sure I've got your direct deposit. And then like you're just kind of thrown into it and there's not necessarily a lot of follow-up, which is what I think of as having a true onboarding program. It's more than just day one paperwork. So talk to me a little bit about what can a PEO provide from that aspect of onboarding.
Yeah, so a lot of that could be automated, and it is automated within the PEO. So, your day one, you don't want to be filling out paperwork outside of your I-9 as your first day. You want to be meeting your team, meeting everybody, kind of doing some training and really starting on that right footing and having that first impression. So with the PEO, you can, as they're going to be hired and their start date, you can set them up in the system and they'll get an email. So for example, when I started, I got an email ahead of time and said, you can go ahead and enroll in the system, set up all your direct deposit information, enroll in benefits, do any trainings that had to be done. So read the handbook, test the handbook. If we have to do harassment training or any of those trainings, that can all be done ahead of time. And so when you start day one, you bring in your I-9 verification. That's done. And then now you're off to the races.
That can be just like quick and easy.
Yeah. And then now you're off to the races, meeting your team, really being immersed into the culture. And so that first day you come back and you're like, it was awesome. I didn't just get locked in a room and say, hey, fill out your paperwork, we'll find you later. I was, in it. And so that first impression, because as you know, if your first impression is bad, they're going to have that buyer's remorse real fast.
Yeah, I've been there. I have been there where I sit there and I'm like, "Oh, crap, like, what did I do? This is not the right place for me, like, I don't wanna be spending all day here." And then I've also been on the other side of the table where, like, I'm part of the HR team that is like, I'm like, "This is so boring." And it's like, this is not what people wanna be doing. This is not an engaging way to start.
Yeah.
What are some of the things that in general you see, like, as we move, we're a couple months into 2025, what are some of the challenges or some of the priorities, I'll say, either one, that you see happening kind of in the world of HR and employment in 2025?
It's funny. The last couple of years, I mean, things have changed so fast. So 21, 22, it was all about the employee. They had all the power, they had the leverage. Jobs were plentiful. It was, if you're not taking care of me, I'm leaving, and I'll quit without telling you. And so now, with all the uncertainty that's going on, you saw it parts of last year, and then now for sure, people aren't leaving. They're like, no. I mean, you saw it. I guess consumer confidence came out, and it was lower than it has been. And so with that, you're going to see people that aren't leaving. They don't want to leave their jobs, and there's a lot of people in the job market that can't find jobs. So for companies, one, they're looking at costs. They're saying, okay, how can we save money? Depending on tariffs and things like that, how do we we don't know what our cost of goods are going to be, so we got a budget there, but also our biggest line items are people and our health benefits. So what can we do to, one, save money, two, we've got to train the people that we have, because we need to take care of them. We know they're not going to leave, so let's make the most of them. But if there's somebody that's just not working out, you do have the opportunity to potentially move them out, and there's a large job pool right now, so that way you can hire somebody that maybe if they may have been looking for 6, 7, 8 months, and so you're able to get people at a lower salary, if you will, than you might have been in a couple years ago, where you had to pay premium dollar just to get somebody in the door.
Yeah, that's an interesting thought because I think that the premium pay, I think that the pay rates have maintained, like they've stayed where they are, but I think it's some of the extras and some of the sign-ons and the bonuses and some of that stuff that like that has, I think, gone down a little bit. So I would say, I agree in a sense though that because things are so uncertain and there is this, people are scared and they don't know what's going to happen. They don't have a lot of hope for, again, that whole consumer outlook. And I think people are sitting tight a little bit more that like, I don't know if now is the time to make a change because I don't know what's going to happen with these other organizations. And then I also think that organizations, because they did have to respond so strongly that people are like, all right, I got what I wanted from them. So like now I'm going to sit tight because now I'm in a place where I feel like I've got a better, value proposition that's like meeting my needs. But I do think it's really interesting. I agree. I think there's just so much uncertainty and I don't know what's going to happen in this crazy market.
No, I mean,
Yeah, I
it's
wish I had a crystal ball because I would be using that in so many different ways.
and just it's crazy how fast it turned too, because the last couple of years we've been just highlighting, hey, you've got to be the best version of yourselves, on what you offer for health benefits, what you offer for pay, what are the extra perks. You can't have everybody come to the office because nobody else is, and if you do that, you're going to lose people. Well, now you can demand everyone come back, and what are you going to tell the employees, what are you going to do about it? You're not going to leave. You don't have to offer somebody so much, as you mentioned, the large bonus, the
I do hope though that, I have this internal, like, I want to have a win-win situation for like all employers and employees. So I really hope that some employers continue to do the things that are working for their employees, which then makes their people more successful and more engaged. And then of course helps the bottom line for their business. So I hope that even if things are cooling in the labor market, that we still see employers who still, make the choices to invest and continue to reward their people so that they're, making it a win-win for everybody.
and those are the companies you're going to see that are going to thrive. The ones that really, because those are the ones that doesn't matter the circumstance of the economy. They're the ones that know that their people are the most valuable asset. It doesn't matter what kind of business they're in, software, widgets, whatever. They know that without their people, they're not going anywhere. So those are the types of companies that take care of their people, good and bad times, that are going to thrive. And the ones that say, hey, I can now skim on dollars, I can skim on this and this, because the economy is the way it is. Those are the ones that are going to struggle and always go up and down, just depending on what.
I think that's just ingrained in their culture, and you know it, and your employees know it.
And you see it all the time. It's like I hate my job. I hate my this and that. I hate going to work. And then you see people like, yeah, no, I love going to work. I love going to the office. It doesn't matter what's going on in the outside environment. It's no, they take care of me. They treat me well. They do all these things to to know that I'm an actual person, no matter what. And so those are the companies that will always thrive, and everybody else will always just have to ride the wave.
We'll kinda get what's left over or just, like, be constant churn.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think, and you kind of alluded to this too, I think that in some ways, in the world of HR, like we were able to be on cruise control for a long time. Like I think about even in my career, and I've been in HR for more than 20 years, for a long time, it'd be like, all right, we know what we need to do. Like we don't have to worry about the transactional because like we've got that under control. And so we had the opportunity, like, let's think more strategically, or let's think about how are we going to improve this, onboarding or whatever it was. Like we were able to spend some energy on different things that mattered to the organization because we weren't seeing a lot of regulatory change. So we were able to handle that. Well, now we're in a spot where it is like you need like both hands on the wheel and like you need everybody looking out the windows because like something is changing and something is happening all the time. Like there's no cruise control for HR right now. So how do you think that impacts, I guess part of it the PEO relationship, but just businesses in general?
You try not to pay attention to it if you can, because it changes almost like daily by the hour. And so it's like it's so overwhelming. And you're like, I don't want to look at it.
Yeah, like one day FLSA has a new salary threshold, the next day it doesn't. One day if you're a federal contractor, you have minimum wage that's changing, and the next day it doesn't. Like you have affirmative action, you don't. Like you have to do an owner report, you don't. Like it's just constant.
You just kind of have to roll with it and wait till things are official before you start to implement things like that. And some of it could just be ideas and say, even if it doesn't become a law, it's probably a good idea to abide by this anyway. And so those are good. But then, yeah, I mean, do we have to pay people more overtime? Do we have people, higher minimum wage? Whatever it happens to be, you've got to wait till that's officially locked in before you can. And so that makes it hard.
I agree. It's like what's recommended, what's put into law, but then like is a challenge. So I think that's something we're gonna continue to struggle with for a little while.
And we saw it during COVID, with the vaccines, and then do we have the mandate? Do we not have a mandate? Do we, how do we do it with all that? And then the back to work and all those things. And so now we're seeing it now. I mean, every regulate, like, you have no idea what's going to happen.
That's true. So, on the PEO conversation with different organizations, I know we talked about how it's nice when you do have, some of those HR partners that you can work with in an organization. What is an organization that really benefits from that PEO model, and what is an organization where it's like, no, that's not what you need? Like, give me like what fits and what doesn't fit.
A lot of companies come to us because of the health benefits, because the way we PEOs do health benefits, that we pool everybody into one master health plan.
Yeah, that's huge because health and healthcare for small employers is really hard.
It's a big line item. And so for those companies that are growing, they're 5, 10, 15, 20 employees that are growing, they maybe not offered healthcare before. Those are great fits to get into a PEO because, again, we're able to give them those economies of scale in areas that they wouldn't be able to offer for their employees. And everyone wants to have health benefits. So if you're able to offer great plans that you will see at the big, Bank of America, Duke, all those things, and you can offer those for your small company, that's awesome. And that's a huge leverage for that. And so we see that a lot as why companies join a PEO. Companies that are growing multi-state, kind of like we mentioned, those are great fits. Ones that aren't really good fits, I mean, if you're, 5 employees and you're just going to be 5 employees forever, your health benefits are all taken care of through, other like spouses or just things like that. You don't really need it. We're not typically a good fit. If you get to that size and scale where you're, several hundred people and you're able to,
You've got your own scale then. Yeah.
yeah, you've got your own scale there. And then, from a resources standpoint, you've got your HR teams, you've got everything that you need. And so mainly you're using a PEO for the admin side and a little bit of HR support, maybe an LMS, things like that, where you can use, some of the bigger tools that are out there for that. And we do have clients that are several hundred people. So it just kind of depends on your need and your fit on that.
I like that you can really grow with it because I do think I mean, for me, a lot of my clients are people who are growing, or not people, but organizations that as they continue to hire more people, that's where they come and they need more structure. And of course, particularly in the comp side, they have to get away from like, "Oh, I'm going to hire my neighbor's kid and I'm going to pay them, let's pay them $20 an hour," like into like, well, now you have multiple people doing that job and you need to arrange for that. So I get some of that too with the growth. So I guess that's nice. I guess so some of like your really successful clients are probably like people that then like work with you for years and then outgrow you.
Some of those, a lot of our clients get acquired, and that's just kind of a success penalty. When things were going really well in 21 and 22, I had several clients get acquired, and that was where they were headed. And they came to me when they were three, four, five people. And then when they got acquired, they were 15, 20, 30 people. And that was their growth plan. And so being able to help them and see that growth was really cool. And, as serial entrepreneurs, I knew they were going to come back. And so a lot of them will go to the beach for a year, get bored, and then go do something else and call me and say, hey, let's go again. So once you kind of get into the model, you see what it does. And
That's funny. I had an engagement once with a gentleman who was hired to essentially grow a company to a certain size with the intent that in 2 years it was going to be acquired. And so we were looking at like his base and bonus models based on doing this growth, knowing that his goal was to work himself out of that job.
we always ask, what's the end game here? Are you growing? Are you trying to sell? Are you trying to run it till you don't want to run it anymore? Are you trying to pass it on to the employees, your kids? What's the plan at the end of the day? So that way we can help structure your growth in that.
Well, one of the things you've mentioned a couple times is kind of on the training side. So one in the skills for hiring or making sure people have the skills they need to do their jobs, but then you also mentioned an LMS or a learning management system. Talk to me a little bit about what can a PEO do there? I don't traditionally think of LMS being tied to PEO. Again, I come back to some of those more administrative tasks. So tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so just about every PEO has an LMS built in, and it's built into their software. Everyone has that software platform, and so with the LMS, you're going to have your assigned trainings that you have to do, like harassment trainings, cybersecurity trainings, those things that are mandated in different states, but also highly recommended in every state and every job. Just if anything, it's a CYA that you had everyone do it, but then from a learning and training development side, and say, hey, maybe we've identified people that are on that path to become management, but they've never done that before. So, what kind of leadership training can we give them? What kind of manager training can we give them? But even if you have people that have been managers for a long time, it's good to have that additional training and say, hey, some things have changed. Now we have different demographics in the workplace. We have Gen Z now, and they have a lot of demands and things that they want. Plus, everyone else wants everything, as well. So, how do we maybe provide some training to help manage all the different ages and things like that in the workplace?
So in addition to some of those leadership type of skills, I recently have had conversations with a couple folks coming out of the finance space and we've talked about retirement plans and saving and things like that, but also from the employee perspective that a lot of individuals they just don't have the financial knowledge to even like budget and do savings. So is there anything built into the PEO that can also help with some of that really kind of the financial knowledge that people are lacking?
There are different options. So within a lot of the benefits plans, there's like the EAP programs and things like that. And a lot of those have specific things that tie to financial learning. And a lot of them are adding financial wellness onto their benefits packages because it is such a thing that everyone needs. And so most for PEOs will also offer a 401k. And so through that, they have additional resources and things that they can get individual help if they need it for financial literacy and things of that nature. Because most people, if you ask, it's like, what do I want? Well, I want student loan forgiveness, and I need financial literacy to help help plan as I continue to grow my career. So those are two big things everyone wants, and so providing that and as part of the benefits package goes a long way to recruiting.
Any last words about the PEOs, how that works, why it might work for somebody that you want to share with us?
The reason that I'm still in the PEO industry is just because I believe in it so much, and I think it doesn't matter, if it's Extensis, if it's any other PEO, and all the PEOs have their pros, cons, and things of that nature. So if you're going to explore one, do your due diligence. Look at several because they all have different options and what makes sense for them. But I think and we've seen this over the years, is that 10, 15 years ago, nobody outsourced payroll. And I sold copiers when I started my sales career, and we had several companies that were payroll processors, and they were printing checks every single day for people to get paper checks. And so then now, if you don't outsource your payroll, doesn't matter how big you are, there's something probably going on behind the scenes that I don't want to know about.
I don't even do my own payroll. I pay somebody else to pay me. I don't wanna deal with it. I don't wanna deal with the taxes and, like, making sure I have all the registration. Like, no. Somebody else is an expert in that, and I'm gonna trust them to do it.
And so even if you're doing it yourself through, one of the payroll platforms, if you're not outsourcing that, something may be up. But I think the PEO market's headed that way. You're seeing more and more companies that used to be that 15, 25, 30 person groups that were coming to PEOs. Now you're seeing the smaller companies, the fives, the sevens, the tens, that are really looking for PEOs as they get to that size, because it's like, why would I not do this? Why would I not just outsource everything in a bundle and just not have to worry about it versus having to piecemeal this thing together and deal with it individually. So I think that's where the industry is headed. I think it's starting to head towards that kind of payroll arena where it's all bundled in. And
Let the experts do their thing. And you do what you know when you started your business or whatever you're running your business for, like, you thrive there, that's what you should focus on, and leave the rest to somebody else.
yeah, I've got a buddy of mine. He has the best quote ever for outsourcing. And he says, you can't do it 10% better than somebody else, outsource it. And so I was like, I'm going to steal that from you and always tell it. But it makes sense. I mean, you got into a business because you had an idea, a product, something that you could monetize, and you did it, and you did it well enough that now you have to hire people. You didn't get in a business to hire people unless you're in staffing, and then you did. But, so outsource that to people that can handle the people side of your business so you can continue to focus on what you're good at.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. Well, Ryan, thank you so much for coming on and just kind of demystifying the PEO for us and talking about some of the different services. It's definitely more robust than even I was aware, and I've been in this world for a long time. So, really appreciate your time and your knowledge. And thank you to our listeners. Come back and listen to the Gorilla HR podcast again soon. Thank you.
That's it for this episode of the Gorilla HR podcast. We hope you found some unconventional wisdom and actionable advice to help you in your own HR journey. Remember, we're all working together to build better workplaces. Want to join in the conversation? Send us your questions, stories, and maybe even your own guerrilla tactics to podcast@gorilla-hr.com. And if you enjoyed the show, please like, subscribe, and share with your network. Until next time.